Over the last couple of weeks, I have ranked the starting quarterbacks for each and every conference. I did the SEC and the Big Ten, and today we are going to go through the ACC. It's kind of an interesting conference. You actually have a lot of proven talent. The top 12 quarterbacks have already all played significant amounts in college, and then the bottom few are all kind of new or journeymen. In today's video, we're going to rank all 17 starting quarterbacks in the ACC, go through who they are, and where each guy ends up on the list. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you want to support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now, let's rank every quarterback in the ACC. At number 17, we have the Stanford quarterback situation. Right now, it's apparently a quarterback battle between Ashton Daniels, Elijah Brown, and Cedric Irvin, and out of those three guys, there's definitely someone I am rooting for, and there's a lot to figure out. Well, right now, Ashton Daniels and Cedric Irvin are the more experienced guys. The wild card is Elijah Brown. He's one of the highest-ranked quarterbacks to ever commit to Stanford, and is seen as the X-factor in the offense. This past year, he threw for 2,800 yards with 31 touchdowns and 4 picks, and has apparently been making things really interesting. Coach Taylor is going to really have to figure this one out, and if it was either Irvin or Daniels, I'd rank them at 17 with not a lot of mobility to move up, but if they ended up going with Brown, then I would say he has a much higher ceiling. At number 16, we have the Wake Forest quarterback situation, which is currently a battle between Hank Bachmeier and Michael Kern. If you haven't heard the name Hank Bachmeier in a while, there's a reason. After being a huge blue-chip recruit, he ended up going to Boise State, where he started out hot, but then has since kind of flamed out, and went to Louisiana Tech. He ended up using his final year of eligibility and will transfer to Wake Forest, where right now I think he has the edge to be the starter, but he will have to fight off Michael Kern, who's also been fighting really hard for the position. He started one game last year, and honestly, Bachmeier is probably the better option, but at the same time, Bachmeier has regressed over the last few years, and there's really not a reason for me to rank him much higher than 16. We'll have to wait and see though, as maybe he'll surprise us all. Ever since Kenny Pickett, the quarterback position has kind of been a mess for Pitt, as they had Keaton Slovis 2 years ago, and then last year they went between Phil Dracovic and Christian Vare, and this year they still have a lot to figure out. They'll have a quarterback battle between Nate Yarnell and Alabama transfer Eli Holstein, but it looks like Yarnell is going to be the starter, as it sort of is the unofficial ruling going on. Last year he ended up playing in 4 games, in which he started 2 against Boston College and Duke, and ended up throwing for 595 yards and 4 touchdowns. Yarnell ended up being the starter in the spring game and has looked solid, but he's still really unproven, and I'm not really sure how much potential he has. He looks like he could be alright, but compared to the other guys on the list, there's really not a reason to rank him higher than 15th, and maybe Holstein will take over by the end of the year, as he was really highly recruited. At number 14, we have the Virginia quarterback room, which will have a battle between Anthony Colandrea and Tony Muskett. Muskett ended up playing a couple of years at Monmouth before he would transfer to Virginia last year. After not playing well in their first game, Anthony Colandrea came in and put up big numbers. While he did end up struggling with turnovers, he set the freshman record for Virginia with total offense, as he had over 2,000 yards, but as I said, he did struggle with turnovers. Right now it looks like Colandrea is probably in line to be the starter, but Muskett also was pretty solid last year, and he's the more experienced dude. And if they roll with Anthony, he has a chance to move up the list, as he kind of had that it factor and was a lot of fun, and Muskett's more the safe bet who's probably not going to do anything stupid. For now though, if it's Anthony, I'm going to have him ranked at number 14. At number 13, we have Duke quarterback Malik Murphy. After being a 5-star recruit at one point, Malik Murphy would still be a top 10 quarterback in the class of 2022, and he would redshirt his first year at Texas. Last year, he'd play in a couple of games after Ewers was banged up, and showed potential as he had 3 touchdowns. He's only ended up making 2 starts in his career, but he's since transferred to Duke, or he will be the quarterback for Manny Diaz. At 6'5", Malik Murphy is super athletic, has great height and a strong arm, but can he be developed? That is sort of the big question mark, as he's one of the bigger boom or bust players on this list. Murphy was highly recruited, and I do think he's going to shine, but it'll probably be towards the end of the year. He could end up getting replaced too, for all we know, but for now, I'm going to have him ranked at number 13. At number 12, we have an interesting quarterback battle, as that will be between Max Johnson and Connor Harrell. As we all know, Max Johnson ended up having a hot start at LSU before he would eventually transfer to A&M, where he has been a backup/starter the last 2 years for the Aggies. For his final year of eligibility, he has decided to transfer to UNC, where he will most likely be in the driver's seat to the starting job because of his experience, but he will have to fight off Connor Harrell, who is one of the top quarterbacks in high school football a few years ago and has a better arm, is more athletic, and has more potential. Honestly, I don't really know who's going to win, but I do want Connor Harrell to win. He's a better runner, has more potential, and has a better arm. And Max Johnson, to me, kind of just seems like one of those journeyman quarterbacks who we've already seen what he has. There's a small chance maybe he becomes a star, but the ceiling is honestly not that high with Max and is a lot higher with Connor, but the floor is also a lot lower with Harrell. For now, though, I'm going to say Max Johnson probably wins the job, and because of his experience, he'll end up being at number 12. At number 11, we have Tyler Shough. To me, this is something that gets under my skin in college football, as Shough will be on what I think is his 7th year, and there's really no reason he should be playing. There's already guys like Brady Allen and Pierce Clarkson who were really highly recruited on Louisville's roster, but instead Jeff Brom's going to go with a guy who has not panned out at any of the schools he was at. Tyler Shough, though, has played a lot and has a lot of experience, which is a lot like Jack Plummer, who they had starting last year. Shough, in my eyes, is just an average quarterback who is probably not going to end up doing much, but because he has more experience than the other guys on the list, and will probably do exactly what the system asks of him, Louisville will be in decent hands. Maybe I'm being a little bit too hard on him, but these 15th year eligibility quarterbacks really need to go. Another guy who probably needs to be done too is Grayson McCall. After coming out of Indian Trail, North Carolina, McCall was a huge reason why Coastal Carolina went to the front of college football in 2020. He ended up throwing for 2,500 yards that year, and then would follow it up with similar seasons in both 2021 and 2022. He was seen as a future NFL pick, and was potentially going to go to North Carolina, but instead decided to stick it out with Coastal, and then last year had a terrible injury and had a bad year. He's decided to transfer to NC State for his final year of eligibility, where he comes into a team that is looking to be near the top of the ACC. He already has the talent and experience, and for me, the one question I have is how high is his ceiling, and will he be able to recover from that injury? Still, though, he's a good quarterback, and I have him ranked at number 10. At number 9, we have a guy who some will think is somewhat controversial, as I have Fernando Mendoza from Cal. Coming out of the prestigious Columbus High School in Miami, Mendoza went under the radar. He actually flipped from Yale to Cal, as he's a really smart dude, and at 6'5", he also put up big numbers, and ended up redshirting his first year in 2022. This past year, he would start the final 8 games of the season, and ended up passing for 1,708 yards with 14 touchdowns. He led Cal from being terrible to end up making a bowl game, and did well replacing Sam Jackson. Mendoza showed a lot of potential, and at 6'5", I think he has all the talent in the world, but the thing is, will he have enough weapons around him, and how good will Cal be? But for now, maybe it's a little far-fetched, but I have Fernando Mendoza ranked at number 9. At number 8, we have a quarterback who I've done a video on recently, and that is Thomas Castellanos. After not being the starting quarterback in Week 1, Castellanos would take over in Week 2, and ended up throwing for 2,200 yards with 15 touchdowns, and also ran for over 1,000 yards. I believe he was the first quarterback in Boston college history to do that, and he was a guy who was actually seen as a prodigy in middle school coming out of Georgia, and put up big numbers and ended up committing to UCF. He ended up not playing there before he transferred to BC, but he now returns in 2023 as, in my opinion, a top half starting quarterback in the conference who can both run and throw the ball, and I think he has potential to jump up the list, but the only reason I don't have him higher is because the top 7 in my eyes are actually pretty loaded. At number 7, we have Kyle McCord. Maybe it's just because he was from Ohio State and was a blue-chip recruit, but Kyle McCord, coming out of St. Joseph's Prep in Philadelphia, was a star alongside Marvin Harrison Jr. and looked like the next big thing when he got to Ohio State. He ended up beating out Devin Brown for the starting job, and in 2023, he did a solid job as Ohio State's quarterback. He ended up throwing for 3,100 yards with 24 touchdowns and 6 picks, and led them to an 11-0 start. Unfortunately, he ended up throwing for 271 yards and 2 costly interceptions against Michigan, especially one in the last couple moments, so he was sort of run out of town after that. I mean, comparing him to CJ Stroud and Justin Fields, he had pretty much impossible shoes to fill. He decided to enter the transfer portal before their bowl game, and quickly settled on Fran Brown and what he was building at Syracuse. He'll take over for Garrett Schrader, who was the starter last year, and from all accords, he's apparently looked pretty solid in fall camp so far, and looks like he will be a good starter. I'm not quite sure how good he could be due to him being at Syracuse, but McCord was a 5-star, has plenty of talent, and the only reason people were knocking him was because he was just above average at Ohio State, when usually they need to be superstars there. For now, though, I have him ranked at number 7. At number 6, we have a guy who sort of came out of nowhere in Kyron Drones. After becoming a 4-star recruit from Pearland, Texas, Drones would go to Baylor, where he would sit on the bench behind Blake Shapen at first. Eventually, he would decide to transfer to Virginia Tech, where under Brent Pry, he had a quarterback battle with former Marshall quarterback Grant Wells. Things didn't really go that well for Drones at first, but eventually, he took over the remainder of the 2023 season and helped Virginia Tech have a really solid year. He ended up throwing for 2,084 yards with 17 touchdowns and only had 3 interceptions. He also ran for over 800 yards and 5 touchdowns on the ground, and he really only played the last 9 games of the year and showed a ridiculous amount of potential. So he's a guy who in 2024 I think will be even better and will probably throw for 2,500 yards and 20 touchdowns and then probably run for over 1,000 yards and 10 scores as Virginia Tech is getting low-key playoff hype. We'll have to wait and see, but Kyron Drones is a guy I'm really excited to watch. At number 5, we have journeyman quarterback DJ Uiagalelei. After him and Bryce Young were the next big thing coming out of the class of 2020, DJ ended up showing flash early on, but then kind of fizzled out. He kind of ended up having a mutual departure from Clemson, as the staff and fans were ready to move on from him, and he was also ready for a fresh start. He decided to transfer to Oregon State, where last year he threw for 2,600 yards and 21 touchdowns, and showed that he still had a lot of potential. He decided to transfer to Florida State for his final year, and will now replace Jordan Travis. He'll be in a quarterback-friendly system, but for now, I do have some questions about who the weapons will be at Florida State, and if he really has what it takes to win at the highest level. But DJ is a solid player who will probably get a chance to sniff the NFL, and for now is the 5th best quarterback in the ACC in my eyes. Up next, we have a guy who replaced him, and that is Cade Klubnik. Coming out of Texas, he was one of the best quarterbacks in the high school world, and one of the best Texas high school football quarterbacks ever. He became a 5-star recruit and committed to Clemson, and ended up sitting on the bench for his first year in 2022 before he would appear in the end in their bowl game. Unfortunately, he struggled a little bit, but going into 2023, he'd end up having a better year, in which he threw for 2,800 yards with 19 touchdowns and 9 picks. He also ran for 4 more scores on the ground, but now many are expecting Cade to break out into a superstar in 2024 and put it all together. Honestly, maybe he should be a little bit lower on the list, but I think number 4 is a solid landing position for him, and he's someone I'm really curious to watch to see how he progresses throughout the year. At number 3, we have a guy who some may think is controversial, but I have Preston Stone right there. Coming out of Dallas, Texas, he ended up becoming one of the best players in the country, as he threw for 3,400 yards and 38 touchdowns, and also had 500 yards and 10 scores as a senior. He had offers from every big-time school in the country, but decided to commit to SMU. He brought his 13,000 career passing yards to Dallas, where over the last couple years, Preston Stone has developed. This past season, he threw for nearly 3,200 yards with 28 touchdowns, and showed that he has legit NFL potential and is one of the most experienced returning quarterbacks in the ACC. The problem is, though, he played in the American Conference, so how well will that translate to the big boys? We'll have to wait and see, but for now, I have Preston Stone at number 3, and maybe he'll take that spot or he'll fall. At number 2, we have another guy that people are probably going to disagree with, but I think Haynes King is worthy of that position. After becoming a 5-star recruit from Longview, Texas, Haynes King was anointed the savior of Texas A&M football in the post-Kellen Mond era. Unfortunately, he would get hurt his first year as a starter in 2021, and just wasn't able to put it together in 2022 either. He then decided to transfer across the country to Georgia Tech, where he would win the quarterback battle and actually had a really tremendous year. I actually don't think people realize how good Haynes King was, as he lifted Georgia Tech from a team that hadn't made a bowl game in years to then making a bowl game, and he also passed for 2,800 yards with 27 touchdowns, and also ran for over 700 yards and 10 scores. If you do the math, he had nearly 4,000 combined yards and 37 touchdowns, and elevated his team from bad to good. Georgia Tech's getting a significant amount of hype, and Haynes King is also super athletic, and I think has what it takes to potentially bring Georgia Tech to the top of the ACC, and maybe play his way into an NFL roster. Maybe it's a little bit high to have him at number 2, but I really didn't see that much of a difference between him, DJ, Cade Klubnik, and Preston Stone, so for now, we're going to put him at number 2. That leaves us with the number 1 quarterback in the ACC, and that is Cameron Ward. After being a 0-star recruit coming out of high school, Ward would go to Incarnate Word and would end up putting on a show there. He put up thousands of yards and scored a ton of touchdowns, and decided to transfer up to the Washington State level. He ended up becoming the starter right away, and was seen as a guy who could potentially play 1 year and go off to the NFL. While he had a really good season in 2022, he'd come back for 2023 and put up even better stats. He ended up being top 10 in the country in pretty much every statistical department, and at one point, I think he was in the top 3. He threw for 3,735 yards with 25 touchdowns, and also ran for 144 yards and 8 touchdowns. To me, he is the most proven quarterback in the ACC, and also has that it factor. He decided to transfer over to Miami, where many believe he's the best quarterback they have had in a long time. While some may compare him to De'Aaron King, I think he's better than that, and for now Cam Ward is the unquestioned number 1 quarterback in the ACC, and I think he will finish there too. He's been getting NFL hype the last few years, and he turned down the 2024 draft, so Cam Ward I think will put it all together, and he's going to be someone who's going to take over college football. But what do you guys think? I ranked all the ACC quarterbacks 1 through 17, and if you have disagreements, which I'm sure you have, be sure to let me know down below, and let me know what list or type of video I should do next. Before you go, don't forget to also leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and check out all my other videos on the end screen, including my video ranking Big Ten quarterbacks. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.